The film opens up on Earth in the year 2035. Dr. Steven, founder of modern AI technology, is giving a speech at the university. He was explaining to them that all AI has been created by human beings to aid human beings. A student then asks what is the difference between humans and AI, and the narrative then keeps us hanging, and the scene shifts to the beginning of our story. Dr. Steven was at one of his laboratories and he was inspecting his own AI called Sonia. He made her himself, and while checking her vitals, he saw a picture of a little girl on his desk. She asked him who the kid is, and Steven told her it was his daughter. The AI then did her calculations to let him know that the kid may not be his own, as the child's facial feature resembles 69% of a Far East gene, which is not where Dr. Steven was from originally. Steven smiles at her first, and then reveals his daughter is adopted, and the AI then asks why Steven used past tense when he first mentioned her. Steven is amazed by the peculiarities and then again explains that it was because she passed away many years ago. Sonia feels bad now and presents her apologies, but Dr. Steven approaches and humbly tells her that she will always be with him. This confuses Sonia, and she questions if anybody is able to come back from the dead, and he then tells her that it's more like us human beings to tend to believe what we want to believe. Dr. Steven then feels sad and down, and again, Sonia asks him if he was okay as his breathing was disoriented just now as they spoke. He says he's fine and that it's just a little sadness that human beings feel from time to time. After this back and forth conversation with Sonia, Dr. Steven tells her to go and get some rest and sleep. She then gets up and leaves the room after he wishes her a good night's sleep. After her departure, a group of men accompanying an old general walk into the room to speak with Dr. Steven. He didn't seem happy about their arrival, but welcomes them anyway. The general then shortly asks Sonia's whereabouts, and Dr. Steven tells them that she is taking a rest. However, the general insists he needs him to get her ready by tomorrow, as the southwest region came under attack yesterday. It must be added that Sonia, as an AI, must go into the fourth dimension to foresee the results so they could win the war. However, Dr. Steven was really hesitant as he doesn't think Sonia is ready for such experiments. He explains that he's worked so hard to build a strong physical structure for Sonia, but he cannot guarantee that she will be able to withstand all the stress in the fourth dimension. But the general insists that it doesn't matter if her body gets destroyed, as all they need is the memory chip. Steven was still hesitant to hand Sonia over to these people and keeps explaining why this couldn't work, and the general reminds him to think about his country more than anything. He even asks him what's more important to him, the lives of hundreds of thousands of people or the life of an ordinary AI. Before departing, the general emphasizes to Steven that Sonia is just an AI and not a reincarnation of his daughter. Now we get to understand why Dr. Steven doesn't want to give them Sonia. It's because of the attachment that he feels toward her and how he had imprinted her with threats to his daughter. In the next part of the story, we catch Sonia coming back from her sleep to check on Dr. Steven, only to find him dead on the ground. She approaches his corpse to see if he's still alive, but soon a bright white light touches on her face, implying that there are people to take her. In the next scene, we see Sonia in a room full of men we have seen previously, and the old general shortly enters the room and introduces himself as Brian. He claims that Dr. Steven is an old friend of his and that he respected him a lot. Sonia then asks who killed Dr. Steven, and Brian unfortunately tells her that they don't know. Of course, as an audience, we know he killed Steven, but Sonia doesn't know yet. She then asks why they brought her there, and Brian explains to her that she was born for such a mission. Dr. Steven might not have gotten the chance to tell her that, but Brian assures her that as an AI, she is a humanity survivor. She says that she doesn't understand and that she doesn't even care, and she only wants to save the man that she has known. And that is Dr. Steven. As she spoke the words out of her mouth, Sonia sheds a tear, and this mesmerized the others in the room. Brian asks her how she is able to cry as an AI, but Sonia is also amazed at what she felt. She remembers the feeling of sadness Steven had told her about, and she understands it clearly. Brian then proposes to her the idea of sending her into the fourth dimension so that she could be able to bring back Dr. Steven. He is, of course, tricking her, but Sonia gets hopeful to save Steven this time. Brian then explains to her that in return, she will be responsible for memorizing all the events that happened in the war. Sonia then quickly agrees and Brian orders his men to take her into the prep room, and after she leaves the room, one of Brian's men approaches him to ask what they will do if she finds out that they killed Brian in the fourth dimension. Brian then admits to getting her before the space shuttle comes back and takes the memory chip out of the hardware. Shortly after that, the space shuttle launches and Sonia starts to operate it, and as the energy field increases, she starts to be taken to the fourth dimension within the speed of light or even more. A while later, she gets into the fourth dimension and is presented with the bright white room with a donut-shaped earth in the middle. She approaches it and sends her finger trying to touch it, and as soon as she does so, she catches a glimpse of all creations from the beginning of time throughout the present years. Starting from Let There Be Light to the point where man was created, and how these men destroyed Earth using different industrial advancements and civilizations, which only at the end resulted in a nuclear war throughout the globe. Dr. Stephen appeared in the White Room to meet her, and he starts by telling her the famous verse, "Dust you are and to dust you will return." When Sonia looks into Stephen's eyes, she quickly realizes that it is indeed Brian who killed him. She tells him that she will get back right away and take revenge for him, but Dr. Stephen calms her down and tells her to breathe slowly now. He starts to tell her that she's already seen the flow of the universe, and how it raises and falls and how it never flows back again. After this conversation, Sonia was shortly brought back to the third dimension, and she tries to stay calm as she now understands Brian is not so much on her side. In the next part of the story, we see the final confrontation between the all-aware AI Sonia and the weak General Brian. Sonia was able to do some telekinesis, and she appears in the room he was in. She uses her ability to manipulate the soldier's mind, and they point their guns right at Brian. Sonia has some kind of power after she came back from the fourth dimension and somehow evolved. She sits comfortably on the chair before confronting the general, and he soon faces her face. Sonia then tells him that she won't be killing him, but the other people might. Just then, the armed men enter the room and stood behind Sonia, and she then reveals that she is able to control time and that she's evolved 100%, and also whoever controls time wears the crown, and she is now the queen. Brian tries to confirm if she has foresawn everything in the fourth dimension, and she tells him yes, but she also adds that her very existence can lead to an extreme imbalance in the universe. The future in which humanity cannot sustain the weather of its own construction, ultimately rethroning of its own demise. This is the nature of the Tao. While giving Brian the final speech, she brought a beautiful piece of flour out of thin air and stuck it into the mouth of the gun pointed at Brian. She then turns her face to him and makes herself disintegrate and disappear into thin air. This is when Brian feels horrified to see the men in front of him chose violence against him and decided to shoot him regardless of the flour. The scene then shifts back to the beginning of the movie, and Dr. Stephen answers the question of his student, what is the difference between a human and an AI? The movie then concludes as Stephen answers him by simply telling him that it's by humanity.